The scroll sawing, I would listen to the Shoe Nibley lectures on cassette. And so it was quite a pleasure to do that. And I was able to listen to his Book of Mormon lectures. Like I say, I listened to him for hours on end. I worked for Criminy. I had to work for 15 hours a day scroll sawing, and I would listen to his tapes for 15 hours a day. And I listened to his entire lecture some 50 times. So, well, it's nice to have the transcripts also, because now I can share them with you. So, and they renumber each transcript. And so it's impossible to tell you what real page I'm on, so I'm in lectures 6 and 7. And that's all I'm going to be able to tell you. If you really want to, you ought to get these anyway and read them. They are some of the most phenomenal commentaries on the Book of Mormon in existence, as only Hugh Nibley could do. Now he's saying here, he says, Jeremiah dictated the book. See, the princes were out to get Jeremiah too, because he was their enemy. Unfortunately, the princes just did not like what he was saying, and he was saying the message of the Book of Mormon, which is the message of all the prophets: repent or be destroyed. He was a perfect Hopi in this respect. Back then he would have been one of the Anasazi, who are the ancestors of the Hopi, you know. And then the Navajo were the latecomers and so on and so forth. But anyway, that's another video. That's another series of videos. So the princes were out to get him. And Jeremiah dictated the book and read it to the people. Now, he took the same book to the palace and he read it to the group of the princes. And they wanted to hear it. These princes were the Sarim. This is an interesting thing. They are always called the princes in the King James Bible. The Sarim is translated as princes. However, the word Sarim in the plural, it's got the yod and the final mem in it. The Sar is the singular and Sarim is the plural. The translation is the elders. Isn't that interesting? It's used in all the Semitic languages for great and old. In Egyptian, if you see a man with a staff like this, a great man, he is a seer. He is a great man, or he is a wer, the Indo-European wer, or he is a shemsu. He is one of the elders. Our word sir is related to it. It's a term of respect. In other words, these were the important men that Jeremiah was reading his book to. The chiefs, the big men. As I say, in the Book of Mormon it's translated correctly as elders. In the King James it's translated as princes. They were not necessarily princes. However, they were influential landholders, you see. They were quite a body of them, and they were not of royal blood. A few of them probably were, but they were Sarim, the ones that Zoram was out with by night, holding secret sessions when Nephi met him and took him out of their camp. They swore him in to be a member of their society out in the desert, and he decided to stay with the brothers for the rest of his days. Now, what a commentary on Jerusalem. Zoram could have said, heavens no, nothing doing. He could have tried to make a run for it back, but instead, he simply follows what Nephi's invitation. So apparently Zoram was uncomfortable with Jerusalem as well, you know. So, and he reviews the discovery of the Lachish Letters. Now, they were found by J.L. Starkey in 1935. It's interesting, his story of Starkey. 1938, he had business to go back to in Jerusalem, and on the way he was held up and he was killed by a bunch of bandits out on the road. You know, this is the background to the parable of the Good Samaritan. The poor guy gets beat up and left by the road dead. Well, that's what happened to J.L. Starkey, only he died. This is the type of gravity of situation that this area is always associated with. It is a dangerous area. There are thieves and thugs and killers and bandits all over the place, roaming, marauding groups of people out in the wilderness. This is typical of Palestine in the 1930s, he says. It's never been secure. So these letters were written in Lehi's time. Now, what about them? Being written on potsherds, they survived. This is so fortunate. I'm so glad that the papyrus from Egypt did not make it up here, or we would have never had these wonderful insights into Lehi's day, or Jeremiah's day. They confirm both the Bible and the Book of Mormon in fabulous ways. These two records are serious. They were in the guardhouse being kept as evidence pending the military trial of one Hosheyahu. He was under investigation. He was being court-martialed, and he was suspected of treason because he had actually read the letters. somebody had tipped off Uriah the prophet. They accused Hosheyahu of telling Uriah. What Hosheyahu did was he read the letters of correspondence between the officials, and he went and told the prophet Uriah, he said, dude, you're in trouble, you got to scram. So that's when Uriah went down into Egypt, and the officials went down there and got him, extradited him, brought him back to Jerusalem, and killed him. See, this is tough times. This is not just fun, wonderful, let's go out for a picnic in the wilderness times. Nothing doing. And they didn't know whether he had read the letters or not, but that's why they were investigating this Hosheyahu. The king's soldiers were put on his trail, and he was fleeing to Egypt. He was fleeing because he was wanted by the police in Jerusalem, that is Uriah, because he had been weakening the hands of the military and the people of the country. Now this is the actual statement off the Lachish Letters. Because of what Uriah was preaching, as one of the many prophets that Nephi said were existing in the land. And in fact, the only reason we know about Jeremiah is because of the book of Jeremiah. In this same instance, in this same time, in the books of Kings in the Old Testament, the prophet that is consulted is Huldah, the prophetess. She's consulted by Josiah. And she says, well, yeah, Josiah, go ahead and start keeping the book of the law of the Lord, but it's still not going to help. You're going to be destroyed. Jerusalem is too wicked. But they consulted Huldah the prophetess instead of Jeremiah. That's so fascinating. There was a lot of prophets out there talking. And the results from the Sarim point of view, from the people in the city, is that they weakened the hands of the military and the people in the country. They're not giving us good news, in other words. No, the good news is repent or to be destroyed. And you're not repenting, so you're going to be destroyed. Well, that's not good news. The prophets don't tell you what you want to hear. They tell you what you need to hear. And as such, they're usually stoned and killed. See, the Book of Mormon lists that whole line of northern prophets, basically as an E-source concept. Zenock, Zenos, Uzziah, Isaias, Nahum. They list how they were killed by the people because they prophesied to the people also. Well, that's exactly what happened. You remember at the beginning of the Book of Mormon, and in that same year there came many prophets prophesying unto the people, they must repent, or that great city, Jerusalem, must be destroyed. Well, that was the message of doom and gloom, and it was regarded by the king, of course, as treasonable. Isn't this interesting? The prophets come with the word of the Lord, and the king screams treason, and he kills them. You want to be a prophet? No, you do not want to be a prophet. It's a miserable fate. It's not a good one. Well, they should take sides with Babylon. Now, isn't this odd? The prophets said, take the side of Babylon. If you go against Babylon, you're in trouble. Well, what did Jerusalem do? They promptly went to Egypt for support. Because the culture, you see, the politics, was strong from Egypt. And they felt the military was strong enough to save them. Well, Josiah went out to fight at the Battle of Megiddo, I believe it was, or something like that, and Pharaoh Necho killed Josiah, the one who found the book of the law of the Lord, the one who consulted Huldah the prophetess. So they felt Egypt had the military might. It didn't. They blew it. They should have went with Babylon. Well, that's what Uriah was guilty of, weakening the hands. He was spreading dissension, in other words. He was spreading disinterest and discouragement both in the country and in the city. That's exactly what Lehi is charged with. At an earlier time, a couple of years before this, he went out and he tried to preach to the people, as the Book of Mormon says, and he had to skip out of town to save his life. See, he, like Uriah, left, didn't he? Well, the police were after him. It tells us that the police sent out Laban to try to overtake him, was sent out by Laban trying to overtake him, but he got away from him. All this is in the Book of Mormon too. But these Lachish letters fill in the picture here really beautifully. It's so interesting. They're considered subversive because they were opposing the official policy and they were undermining morale by their preaching. This is why the prophets were rejected. Now we get the background information of why the prophets were rejected, as the Book of Mormon indicates. They were rejected, but the Book of Mormon didn't give the reasons why, but the Lachish letters do. Same time, same place, same situation, they were weakening the morale of the people.